Good day to you. Today I want to quickly cover a solution that I was building up for COS1512. It's from the year 2022, assignment 3, question 2. And it's basically defining a class called ShowTicket. So without further ado, let me get started. So here's the question. Let's just scroll down to question 2. A theatre sells seats for shows and needs a system to keep track of the seats they have sold tickets for. Define a class for a type called ShowTicket. The class should contain private member variables for the row, seat number, and whether a ticket has been sold or not. Your class should include the following member functions. They want a default constructor that initializes the row and sets the number to 0 and the sold status to false. Okay. An overloaded constructor which accepts an argument as arguments the row and seat number and sets the sold status to false. A member function to check if the ticket has been sold. A member function to update the ticket status to sold, and then a member function to print the row, seat number, and sold status, and then finally a destructor. So it says here, embed your class definition in a test program which creates some show ticket objects, sets some tickets as sold, and prints each of them out. Okay, so that's what our objective is. Okay, so there's quite a bit of stuff that we need to achieve, and so I'm going to show you how I decided to build this class. So let's just open. We've got our code blocks. I'm going to create a new file. I'm happy to create it as a C++ source. I'm going to create just one whole file. I'm not going to create multiple ones. I will show you the path name shortly, so just bear with me. Okay, so I've created a folder called question 2, and I'm creating a file called question2.cpp. Clicking on save. So my path is CUNISA COS1512 question 2, and then the actual file name. Alright, so I click on finish, and then what I like to do is just create a comment over here and call it assignment 3 question 2. Okay, and then because I'm going to be working with input outputs, I need to include I need to have the hash include, and we want to say IO stream. Okay, and we also want to include a string, since we have, well, actually we don't need a string because, yeah, I was using this from somewhere else, but no, I don't want a string. Yeah, is there a string? Let me just think about it. Is there a string? I don't. Yeah, there is a string actually, so I do want to include a string. So yeah, I was just checking it out. Hashtag include, and we want a string because I am going to use a string, and I'm going to use using namespace standard, which is normal for everything. Okay, and now I'm going to start my class. So they've said we need to create a class called ShowTicket. Okay, and in my class they've requested that I need to have a few options, a few defined things. There we go. I'm going to put it on that side, make it big like that. Okay, so the first thing is all these member functions need to be public because we want them accessible throughout the program. So I'm going to paste all of these in an object called public, like that. And the first one that I want is the default constructor. You can see here, default constructor that initializes the row and seat number to 0 and the status to false. So my first default constructor is just ShowTicket with nothing defined. So this is going to be my default constructor. Okay, the next one is called an overload constructor, which accepts as arguments the row and the number and sets the status, the sold status, to false. So I'm going to do the same here, and instead of having just closed, I've used a char variable called r, okay, and an int variable called n. So char for the row and n for the seat number, and then I've used a boolean for the status of the ticket, and this is called my overload constructor. Okay, and so the next one is basically creating mutators or setters, and then after that I'll have accessors or getters. I call them getters, and but yeah. So the first one I'm going to do is I've got three variables, as you can see here, and so those three variables, what I want to do is I want to create getters, setters for them. So I'm going to say void set, I'm going to say row number, and then because this is a char, I'm going to use char r, okay, for row. And so I just generally put here that these are setters or mutators. Okay, and the next one I want to use is the seat number. So I'm going to say set seat number, and this one is an integer variable of n. Okay, and then finally we want another void. What is it? Void, and we're going to say set the ticket status, and this is going to be a boolean, and we're going to use s as our boolean. And then finally we want our boolean, and that's our get ticket status, and we want that as a constant. Okay, so then now we've covered these two requests where we want to be able to check if the ticket has been sold. That can be used by get ticket status, and then we want a member function to update the ticket status to sold, so that would be our set ticket status. Okay, so now the next one is to create a member function to print the row, seat number and sold status, and then finally a destructor. So in order to do a display, I'm just going to create a void, and I want to use print details. Okay, and I'm going to make that a constant, and then finally I need a destructor, and so a destructor is just basically a default constructor, but with this funny symbol before it. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, okay, and set that. And then I also want to mention that this is the member function to print. And then finally this ShowTicket Destructor, I just want to put here tab Destructor. Okay, and now after that I need to create my private data members. So those are going to basically be these things that I've put in over here. So the first one is going to be a char, and I'm going to call it row number, like that. Okay, and then I want an integer of seat number, and then finally a private of ticket status, and that's of Boolean type. Okay, so now I've created my header for my class, and so the next thing I need to do now is to start defining or creating an implementation of this header information. So I'm going to call this implementation. Okay, and so my first public function is this ShowTicket. Okay, so I'm going to go and create that, and because I'm dealing with classes, I need to remember to include the class. So we do that by copying and pasting that over here. Okay, and then I need to create my implementation. So according to them, they want a default constructor that initializes the row and seat number to 0 and the status to false. So the way that I can do that is go to row number, and I say, because it's a character variable, I'm going to actually just use this, and I'm going to say 0, like that. Okay, and then the integer, I can just copy the seat number, and I don't need to put the integer in any commas because it reads it as a number. So we're going to put it as 0, like that. And they said that we need to make the status of the ticket to false. So I'm just going to set this to false, like that. So that fulfills this first requirement. Okay, and so remember that this is the default constructor. Okay, so the default constructor always initializes a class without having to have any variables defined in it, and then the overload constructor is the one where you can have 1 or 2 or 3 depending on how many private member variables you have. You can define as many overloader functions as constructors as you need for these options that are available. So they've only said they just want one overload constructor, and so I'm going to copy this one here. Okay, let's do that, and then remember it's a class, so we want to go and copy this class bit here, and now we'll define our implementation. And so our implementation is basically this row number equals whatever will get set to whatever's being passed here. So we're going to say they're passing us the R, so we want to set row number to that R. The seat number, we also want to be able to set it to N because that's what's being passed in. And then our ticket status, we want to be able to set it to whatever they pass us for the value of S. Okay, so now the next things are to create our getters, our setters and getters, and so I'm going to just copy this over here, and put it there like that. And then because this is a class and we're implementing it, we are calling that. And so our ShowTicket number would just be whatever R is. So we're just going to copy this basically. And so we're setting that value. Okay, and then the next one is set our seat number. And we need to remember it's a class. And we want to implement our class as seat number equals n. Yeah, the whole thing. There we go. Finally, this one. And there, we go to our ticket status. Over there, like that. Okay, and we're saying this one. There. Okay, now that's been all our setters and mutators. Now we want to do our getters and accessor functions. So let's do that. We're copying our class. Okay, and we're getting ready to implement that. And all we're going to do for our accessors and getters is basically return. So we're just going to type in return, and what do we want to return? We want to return our row number for this one. Okay, and the next one is our int. There, like that. And we also just want to return, and this time we're returning our seat number. So we're just going to do that. Return our seat number, and then the final getter is this boolean. Over there, and we want to copy this class, otherwise we'll have problems. And we're going to say return and ticket status. Okay, so that's all our getters and our setters. So let me just go and add here that this is our getters or accessors. And this one is our setters or mutators. Okay, yeah. And then finally, the last two things we need to do is create our print member function. So I'm going to actually just copy this whole line so that we can see it. Okay, yeah. And then we need to include our class over here. I'm going to take this away. I'm going to go to end, and we want to. Okay, so for this, what I've done is, because Boolean true or false doesn't get represented in words, okay, you have to then create a statement that will convert it from a numerical value to a proper status. So this is where I've used my string. So I've said yeah, string result, okay, and what I've done is I've said my output, and I first show my row number. Okay, and that is the value of row number. Okay, and then I want to put another line. Okay, and then I'm also got an output, and I want to show the seat number. Okay, and that is going to be this value over here. You can see I'm going to counter an error because of mistyping there. Okay, so now for this one, what I've done is I've said, okay, I need the result to show as either sold or available. So the way that I've done that is I've created an if statement, and I said if the ticket status is equal to 1, which is normally the value the value returned as true, then I'm going to say the result must be set to sold. Okay, else the result will be set to available. Okay, and then what I've done is I've asked it obviously to output that, and I've said yeah, ticket status. Okay, ticket status, and instead of using the Boolean thing, I've just put here result, which is the string version, and then the end line. Okay, and so that's what I've used. And then finally, the last one we want to do is create a destructor, and so I can just copy this, I can paste it here, and obviously we need this class there. Go to the next line, and I'm just going to put here nothing required, because we're not really needing anything to go in our destructor. Okay, so finally now we're getting to our application. So I'm just going to say our main application. Okay, and then over here we're obviously using our int main. Okay, and then what we need to do is we need to initiate a class. So I've called mine obviously ShowTicket. Okay, and I'm going to use my ticket. Okay, and I want to implement this as number 3 because I've got some other ways of doing some other tickets. Okay, and then we obviously need our variables. So the first one I'm going to use is the char variable of row, then the int variable of seat, and then a Boolean value of status. Okay, and so I'm going to initiate my first show ticket over here. I want to create an instance of this class, and I'm going to call this my ticket 1, and I'm going to use the overload function. Okay, overload constructor, and I'm defining that I want it as row A, and I want ticket number 1, and I want the status, the ticket status set to true. Okay, so that's what I'm doing for the overload one. And so the next ticket is going to be called my ticket 2, and I'm going to use the default constructor to initialize that one. Okay, and then for ticket 3 I want the user to be able to decide which ticket they want. So I'm going to create an output, and I'm going to say enter a row, and I'll give them an example: A, B, C, D, E. Okay, go up to E, and then they can obviously choose whatever ticket they want or whatever row, and then this input will take whatever they enter. So we'll assign that to row, and then we will initialize the ticket 3. We'll tell it to please set. We want to set our row, and we're going to pass it whatever variable they use here, whatever option. Okay, and then I'm just going to create an end line so that and then we basically say my ticket 1, and we call the print details like that, and we're passing the print details. Okay, and so I'm just going to copy these lines here and just change the values, because this is ticket number 2 and we want that one, and then we want number 3, and then finally number 4. Okay, and then we mustn't forget to add our return 0 to the end of our program, because we've got our main, and I believe that should be it. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to build and execute it. I don't know why I put this comma in here. We've lost the set row number. Did it? Dot set row number. Yeah, that's what we need. We need the set. Again, didn't use the set. We need the set seat number. ShowTicket. Okay, forgot to change that to number 4. Okay. Mutator 2 print details. What's wrong with that? Remember print details in Mutator 2, which is of non-class. ShowTicket Mutator 2. Okay, so I was browsing through my code, and the reason being is they're saying that request for member print details in Mutator 2, which is of non-class type ShowTicket 2. It's because I've initialized it with brackets on it. So you have to initialize it without the brackets, and that's what the problem is. Okay, so I'm just waiting for my antivirus to finish scanning, because it restarts the screen all the time. Okay, so here's my question. Remember where it said enter a row number? So I wanted to enter row number C. Okay, and I want it to be 10. Okay, so there we go. Ticket number 1, which is row A, seat number 1, and the ticket status is sold, which is this one. Ticket number 2, you can see, has been initialized to all zeros, which is what it is for the default constructor, and it says that it's available. And then ticket number 3, which was my manual input, is C10 and sold. And then ticket number 4, which I put here as D7 and true, is also sold. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope that you've learned something from this. I know there were a lot of errors from my typing, but yeah, this is part and parcel of learning about coding. As you type, you can figure out what has gone wrong, and sometimes it is a bit difficult to understand what the error message is saying. But that's just giving you some samples of some error messages and how to diagnose them. So yeah, all the best with COS1512, and good luck. Thanks very much. Goodbye.